You've never had to decide if a man lives or dies before. You're just a farmer. You came up out of the PP bottom, same as half the men in this valley. In your hands know a plow and an axe and, well, not much else. But it's the spring of 1804, and Ohio is barely a year old. And out here the state is so new, it still runs on whoever happens to be standing nearby. So when the call comes down that they need men, honest men, local men, to sit in judgment up in Chillicothe, your name is on the list. And that is how you came to be sitting in a room in the old stone state house on a warm May morning, looking at a man they say murdered Asa Mounts. You know the names. By now everyone knows the names. Edward Stalcup, a laborer from the PP country, your country. Asa Mounts, dead since the week after Christmas. These aren't strangers from faraway country. They're men from your own stretch of the Scioto. The story comes out slow over 2 days in that close and crowded courtroom. It happened the 27th of December. The two men had a falling out. The lawyers dance around the why of it, but the word underneath every careful sentence is jealousy, and the word underneath that is a woman. And you notice how nobody quite says her name out loud. What they do say is this, that Asa Mounts lay himself down on the bed in the corner of the room, easy, the way a man does among people he trusts. That Stalcup asked him something. That Mounts didn't answer. That Stalcup, with a loaded rifle already in his hands, told him plain, "Answer me. Answer me the second time or I'll kill you." Asa Mounts said nothing. You sit with that. You try and imagine that silence in a cabin, a man on a bed looking up at another man with a gun, choosing, for whatever reason, pride or spite or plain disbelief, to say not one word, and then the shot, straight through the body. The next morning they held an inquest over the body and named it what it was, willful murder, by the hands of Edward Stalcup. And now the whole weight of it is rolled downhill and landed in your lap in this courtroom. You're not sitting in front of some backwoods magistrate. This is the Ohio Supreme Court. Come to Chillicothe on the circuit. The Chief Justice himself presides. Returned Jonathan Meigs, a man they say will be governor one day. Beside him sits Samuel Huntington, who folks say will also be governor. 2 future governors of the whole state in one room over a killing in the PP Bottoms. That's how young this place is. Its greatest men still ride from town to town to hear cases themselves, and this case is grave enough to hold all of them. The prosecutor, Levin Belt, lays it out cold and clean. 2 Chillicothe lawyers stand up for Stalcup. Michael Baldwin, one of the fiery men who fought to make Ohio State, and a younger fellow named Crichton. They do what they can, but the trouble is there's nothing to argue. The man confessed freely, the whole thing, and you can't unring that bell. So it comes to you and the 11 others. You go out and argue it in low voices for a few hours, and understand there's no real question of what he did, only the terrible weight of putting your names to what comes next. When you file back in, it's your foreman, Isaac Brink, who has to say it out loud for all of you. We, the jury, find the criminal guilty. You watch Stalcup's face when the words land, and then it's done. It's out of your hands. And you tell yourself the deciding is over. It isn't. Not for you, because you're a local man. You're going to stay in town, you have business, and you're going to see how this ends. The sentence comes down 9 days later, and it's worse than a simple hanging. The judges ruled that Stalcup will hang on Friday the 3rd of August, between 9 in the morning and noon. But before that, and they write it right into the sentence, he's to be burned in the palm of his left hand with a hot iron, branded. The letters seared into his living flesh, a mark to carry the rest of his days. Except he has no days. They've sentenced him to die in the same breath. You turn that over and over and it never stops being strange. A brand meant to shame a man through a long life, pressed into a man who has only weeks to live. Word goes around that Baldwin won't quit, that the lawyer rides to see Edward Tiffin himself, the first governor of Ohio, to beg for the man's life. That he argues and pushes and gets nothing. The governor lets it stand. And the summer closes in, and the day comes, the 3rd of August, and half the valley has come to watch. You come back into town to see it through. You need to understand what this is in 1804. A hanging isn't hidden away behind a wall. It's a great and terrible show of frontier life, and they're known about it for weeks, and they come from everywhere. The ground around the courthouse fills up with people, men, women, children, hoisted on shoulders. Folks lean out the windows of a house nearby to get a clean look. There's a boy in that crowd named Richard Snyder, who will carry this mourning to his grave, and who will swear decades on exactly where the gallows stood, close by the old pump, just north of the stone courthouse in Chillicothe. You already know that pump. You've drunk from it. Someday they'll build a new courthouse right over that spot and cover the well, and the people will cross the ground 1,000 times without ever knowing what happened there. You stand in that crowd in the August heat, and you watch a man you helped condemn walk to the rope. And when it's over, when the whole enormous crowd lets out its held breath at once, the thing that strikes you is how small it's made to seem afterwards. Because a few days later, the newspaperman, Nathaniel Willis, sets it in type. Friday last, Edward Stalcup was executed in this town, agreeably to his sentence. Agreeably to his sentence, like a debt, like a bill paid on time, and you were one of the 12 who wrote it. But it's the bearing that you'll never quite shake. Baldwin, the lawyer who fought for him and lost, claims the body, and instead of some quiet churchyard, he carries Edward Stalcup to a lot on West Water Street and buries him there, in the ground directly behind the governor's own house, behind the home of Edward Tiffin, the very man who refused to save him. They say he does it out of pure spite, and he means to keep Stalcup alive in the governor's memory, to make Tiffin look every morning from his own back window at the grave of the man he let hang. A dead man planted like a curse in the governor's garden so that a quarrel between two living men can go on. You go home after, back down to the PP bottoms, back to your plow and your axe, to a country that will one day stop being Ross County and start being Pike. And in time, you'll hear the story told back to you, changed, the way stories always seem. They'll argue whether it was the first hanging in all of Ohio after becoming a state, or only the first in this county. They spell his name 3 different ways, and be sure of none of them. They'll misremember where the gallows stood. But you were there. You sat in the room. You heard the confession and the silence at the heart of it. A man who chose to answer a loaded rifle with nothing at all, and took whatever question he was asked down into the dark with him. You'll never know what that question was. And on the long nights when the wind comes up the valley, that's the part that keeps you awake. Not the rope, not even the brand, just your own name on a verdict and a silence nobody ever explained.